Hey, remember when Rivals came out, was Overwatch but Marvel, and to differentiate, had a mechanic called team-ups? Well, now Overwatch added a game mode with essentially the same mechanic, and there is a question looming above the game. Are they planning on doing team-ups in Overwatch competitively? When Rivals came out, I at first loved the game from ground up. I liked the art style, skins, the heroes, the gameplay, the maps, but one thing always stuck to me as weird and unnecessary, and you guessed it, it's team-ups. To anyone that doesn't know how team-ups work, it's a system where the hero cast has some specific combinations giving you new abilities. Like if your team has Luna and you're playing Namor, you now have an extra squid that slows people, and Luna as a team-up anchor gets an indefinite healing, health, or damage buff for the entire season or seasons while the team-up is active. Not to say it's a bad mechanic or whatever, but a little unserious. To me, it feels so arcadey with how randomly they change them around and how wild they can be. But that's not a bad thing in Rivals, and I guess it fits the idea of Rivals, where everything is more loose. So why don't I like team-ups as an idea? You get cool new abilities and fun combinations of different heroes matching and working together to make the game easier to win. That all doesn't only sound cool and fun, it is cool and fun. There is just only one issue. You need a teammate to be the other part. In random comp games, you will never be able to control your team picks, so you leave the buff on the mercy that someone actually plays the anchor hero. It's just a slot machine with drooling kids on your team. But what if you have a duo who can anchor for you? Well, you see, if the anchor hero isn't something the other party really likes to play, it's gonna make the game feel like dog shit because you are forced to play that hero in order to get the team up going. And the seasonal anchor buff doesn't really do anything either because they always just give the hero the buff anyway when the team up inevitably gets trashed and a new one is added somewhere else. Because if the seasonal buff actually was a buff, that hero would simply just be overpowered for the entire season. See how it's a very flawed idea? Why not get rid of the anchor and just give them both team-up abilities? At least it then feels like you're not just dragging your ass around the map on a hero you don't want to even play, with zero benefits. It would feel like you gain something by playing that hero with your teammates, not just doing favors for the sake of doing favors. That would make it better, but still I would rather be playing with another mechanic. After Rivals came out and most people loved the game, Overwatch started getting its shit together little by little, and it started with perks. And just before anything, this is not a Rivals versus Overwatch take. I very much like both games, okay? So as we all know, perks are abilities or buffs that you get as the game progresses, making your hero more powerful towards the end. And to me specifically, this is infinitely better than team-ups. Like 1,000 million times better. It felt progressive, rewarding, and fun to play with. And best of all, you don't need fartbot Sigma 445 to grant you access to these buffs. Long story short, I like perks a lot more than team-ups. And now that the Overwatch team has gotten more experimental with stuff like this, it's not that surprising that a game mode with team-ups came to be. And I have to say, team-ups do bring some cool elements to the table, like hero combos that would at the same time make sense with the characters and add immersion and fun, while also giving more variety to possible strategies. But outside of that, the condition of having to play specific heroes to get these buffs is way too limiting. And just to squeeze every positive note I can about Overwatch trying team-ups in this game mode, it was better than Rivals in my opinion. Call me a hater all you want, that's simply not true. I have nothing against Rivals, but their team-up system is not amazing. And Overwatch did it better, even if it was just for a Halloween special event. You see, the way Overwatch did team-ups was different. It's the same idea with different execution. In the mode, every playable hero has a buff tied to them. For example, Hanzo gives teammates the buff to deal more damage the longer the range. But it's not just a flat buff for everyone. It's in a mask that you have to choose out of all the other masks of your teammates. Every hero has different buffs in their masks. But let's say Genji chooses Hanzo's mask. Well, now he can, in addition to the buff, turn his ultimate into Hanzo's ultimate, and that is the special team-up ability. And I mean, that's a step to making team-ups better, but the issue still is about the fact that you need to have a teammate to play Hanzo to get that ability. As a concept, team-ups sound really good, and it is fun for the first 10 hours or so, but after a long time, it just feels like a hurdle to get through. After a while, I kinda just want to have the buff without conditions, or at least without conditions I have zero control over. When we talk about game mechanics, I think there are so many better options than team-ups. For one, we could take a system that I already talked about, something we already have, perks. What I think Overwatch Overwatch needs right now is just to focus on perks, like an update to perks, evolve them, make them better and update them. Not only the perks themselves, but the system entirely. Maybe more perk options per hero, or different types of perks that introduces hero building. Perks could offer so many different gameplay possibilities, much more than currently, and I feel like the system needs updating because we still have the issue that some perks are just quite simply the better option. That's why I think more perk options would make it better. It would be much more of a personal choice if there were simply more perks to choose from, and it wouldn't be so easy to say there is the one best option that everyone should go with. It would make the process much more organic and interesting, but Overwatch has had much more experimentation lately, with weird game modes like PvE with upgrades, the random buff game mode, and more. These are game modes that might be experimentation for future systems and mechanics, and there has been a lot of them, and I had a thought about that. Just one question, are they planning on adding more? Because we already got perks. We have Stadium, but those are two different game modes entirely, so is it possible there might be plans on adding more mechanics to core Overwatch, like in addition to perks? Because when we're listening to the devs, interviews and whatnot, the game isn't done with crazy updates and evolving. Things that shake the game, like a lot. The first time this happened was the Season 9 hitbox and health changes. Then perks, so what's next? What kind of groundbreaking and innovative ideas are we gonna see next? Surely it's not team-ups, game modifiers or other systems like that, because I feel like perks did a lot of work in there already. If I'm being honest, I don't want to see any mechanics added other than an update to perks. I really like perks and don't really want any of these arcadey-esque stuff added to competitive Overwatch. Not only because I don't like them, but because it's starting to feel like a million micro adjustments and add-ons might make the game feel like total mayhem. At least perks didn't really change that much about the game, and normally you don't really need to stress about perks either. They're kind of a side thought, that's why I like perks. They're incredibly effective at making the gameplay feel more progressive and rewarding to an individual, but doesn't steal the attention from the important elements in a game of Overwatch. I mean sure, perks do matter a lot, but not as much as like hero matchups or team comps, and it doesn't mess with that core Overwatch experience. Obviously, if something like team-ups would be added into Overwatch, I don't think it's a good idea to shit on it before it even has a chance. And with all of these modes, it's always very difficult to tell because you aren't really experiencing them in a competitive environment, and that difference usually is the determining factor whether something feels good or not. Like when 6v6 was starting to get more attention and we actually got to play the 6v6 mode, and it didn't really feel good since it wasn't in competitive. Or rather, you couldn't tell because you don't get to play both sides in payload maps, and the game energy is just not serious at all. You can't really tell if it would work in a competitive setting if you don't get to try it in a competitive setting. Maybe the Overwatch version of team-ups wouldn't be so bad if it was in competitive. That would give the mechanic an entire new perspective and I would experience it differently. But lucky for me, I already know what team-ups are like and wasn't my favorite. All I'm essentially saying is that if you're gonna add team-ups or other mechanics, please make them good and seamless, because it can significantly worsen the experience, like in Rivals. In my opinion, Rivals would be a better game if there was a different mechanic instead of team-ups, like perks. I like Rivals a lot, but I think team-ups are holding it back. They're not ruining the game, but they're not making it better either. I'm sure in the Overwatch team they are smart enough to know what to add and not to core Overwatch, even without player feedback. They are smart people, and when it comes to perks, they didn't need our opinion to make the choices because they just knew it was good. And these days, if they add disliked modes, mechanics, or whatever anyway, it's going to be reverted if the player base doesn't like it. The relationship this current team has with criticism is quite healthy in my opinion, and their recent choices have given me a lot more trust in them than previously I have had. Like going back on the Stadium changes when people didn't like them at all. I mean, I personally am not really in Stadium a lot, but that doesn't change anything. The important stuff is still there. Also, they finally listened to community feedback and gave 6v6 a dedicated patch. All of this goes to show that this isn't the old team anymore, so the systems added later on are gonna be looked at with care and consideration. Even though I'm against team-ups, I wouldn't be against trying them in core, and this doesn't go for just team-ups. It's unlikely that they're actually gonna add that to Overwatch, but anything they might be cooking up, let's at least try. But team-ups specifically, I wouldn't be optimistic about that.